This is what nobody tells you about retiring in America. Everyone moves to the same 5 towns, the same Florida coasts, the same Arizona suburbs, the same famous names every magazine recycles. And the prices in those places show it. Meanwhile, scattered across this country, there are towns with walkable main streets, real hospitals, water, music, and homes for $140,000. And almost nobody outside their county line ever says their names out loud. That's this video. 20 retirement towns nobody talks about. Every home price pulled fresh from Zillow this week. Every hospital checked. Every town a real place with a real reason to be on this list. We're counting all 20 down to number 1, a river town that quietly figured out something no other small town in America has. And if you've never heard of it, that's exactly the point. We start about as far from the retirement brochures as you can get. The dry side of Oregon. Oregon, and you picture rain, gray skies, wet wool, moss on everything. Now, here's the fact that breaks the picture. Klamath Falls sits on the dry side of the Cascades at 4,000 feet, and it counts around 300 days of sunshine a year, more than Honolulu by some counts, in the state everyone writes off as soggy. This is the Oregon nobody talks about. High desert light, Upper Klamath Lake stretching out of town like an inland sea, the largest lake in the state, with white pelicans drifting past in summer, and Crater Lake National Park about an hour up the road for the days your grandkids visit. Zillow has the typical home here at $314,000, up 2% over the past year, which sounds like real money until you price the rest of the West Coast, because this is one of the most affordable corners of Oregon, a state with no sales tax, in a town where your property taxes stay reasonable and your summer stays dry. The detail I love is under the sidewalks. Klamath Falls sits on geothermal water, and downtown actually pipes it beneath the pavement, so stretches of sidewalk melt their own snow while the rest of the Mountain West is out there with shovels. Your knees will appreciate that more every year. The county even heats buildings and greenhouses with the same water, one of the oldest geothermal district systems in the country, quietly saving residents money every winter since the 1900s. Healthcare is genuinely solid for a town this size. Sky Lakes Medical Center is a full regional hospital right in town, with a medical campus that trains rural doctors in partnership with Oregon Health and Science University, which means the physician pipeline runs toward this town instead of away from it. The honest part, winters are cold and real up here. The town is a long drive from a major airport, and late summer can bring wildfire smoke drifting through the basin, some years barely, some years badly. But if your picture of retirement is sunshine, water, trout, and a state with no sales tax, the rainy Oregon stereotype just kept prices down for you for 50 years. 19 towns to go, and the next one smells like salt water. At dawn on Water Street, the oyster boats still go out. Apalachicola sits where its river meets the Gulf on the stretch of Florida panhandle locals call the Forgotten Coast. And Forgotten is doing heavy lifting in that name, because this is the Florida that existed before the condo towers, a working seafood town of about 2,000 people, shrimp nets, tin roofs, and one of the largest collections of historic homes on the entire Gulf, block after block of Victorian houses built by cotton merchants and sponge traders in the 1800s. For most of the last century, this little harbor supplied the vast majority of Florida's oysters, and though the wild oyster beds have struggled and the fishery has fought through hard years, the town the oysters build is intact, unchained, and unhurried. There is no high-rise here. There is barely a traffic light. The whole town runs about 2 miles end to end, which means the post office, the marina, the coffee, and the doctor are all a bicycle errand, and half the residents seem to treat cars as optional equipment. Zillow has the typical home at $300,000, down 3.7% over the past year, and read that drop the way a buyer should. Florida's coasts have been repricing, and in Apalachicola, that means the rarest thing in this state: a discount on the good coast, with St. George Island's white sand beaches 10 minutes across the bridge. Now the honesty this town requires. Hurricanes are real on this water. Insurance on the coast costs serious money and must be quoted before you fall in love. And the hospital in town, Weems Memorial, is a small rural facility, fine for the everyday, but the full-service hospitals sit about an hour away toward Panama City or Tallahassee. That hour is the price of the quiet. Whether it's worth it depends on your health and your heart, and I'd be lying if I told you the answer is the same for everyone. What you get in exchange is old Florida with the volume turned down. Fishing at sunrise, a bookstore, a raw bar, and a town that never got around to becoming a resort. In 1912, a pottery magnate from Ohio drew a town on paper before a single street existed, and he drew it as a circle. Sebring is built around that circle to this day, a round park at the center of downtown with the streets radiating out like spokes, which is why they call it the city on the circle, and it might be the most pleasant piece of urban design in inland Florida. Notice the word inland because it's the whole trade. Sebring sits in Highlands County Lake Country, 2 hours from either coast, surrounded by nearly 100 lakes including Lake Jackson, lapping right against downtown. And being away from the salt water does two beautiful things for a retiree. It cuts your home price. Zillow has the typical Sebring home at $242,000, down about 2% this year, and it takes the worst sting out of the Florida insurance problem, because inland premiums, while nobody calls them cheap anymore, run far gentler than what the coasts are quoting. You still get the sunshine, the bass fishing, the golf, the January mornings your friends up north resent. And Highlands Hammock State Park sits 10 minutes west, one of Florida's oldest parks, old-growth hammock and boardwalks through cypress swamp, the wild Florida most transplants never find. Healthcare is a genuine strength. Advent Health Sebring is a full hospital right in town, part of one of the biggest systems in the Southeast, so the cardiologist is minutes away, not counties. And once a year, this quiet lake town does something hilarious. It hosts the 12 Hours of Sebring, one of the oldest endurance races in the world, and for one deafening March weekend, the sleepiest circle in Florida becomes a motorsport capital, then goes back to feeding the herons like nothing happened. And a quick one before we keep rolling. This channel is brand new. We pull every number fresh the week these videos go up. So if a $240,000 Florida lake town is useful information, hit subscribe. It's the only thing in retirement that costs exactly nothing. The catch here, so you have it straight, is August. Inland Florida summers are long, hot, and humid, and the lakes are the reward for surviving them. Next, we head for the desert and a town full of painters. Every retiree knows about the art towns, Santa Fe, Sedona, and the prices that come with the postcards. Almost nobody prices Silver City, and the numbers deserve a moment of silence. Zillow has the typical home in this town at $221,000, down 6.6% over the past year, which means one of the most interesting small towns in the Southwest is currently on sale. Silver City started as an 1870s mining boomtown in the foothills of southwest New Mexico, kept its brick Victorian downtown when the silver moved on, and slowly filled those old storefronts with what's there now: galleries, studios, a food co-op, coffee roasters, and the kind of bookstore where the owner remembers what you bought last time. The Continental Divide Trail runs practically through town, and the Gila National Forest starts at the edge of it, 3.3 million acres holding the first designated wilderness in the history of the world. The Gila, the place the whole idea of wilderness protection was invented a century ago. 45 minutes north, the Gila Cliff Dwellings hold 700-year-old stone rooms tucked into canyon caves, a national monument you can visit on a Tuesday with almost nobody else there. Here's the part that surprises people. This is not hot desert. Silver City sits near 6,000 feet, so summers run 15 to 20 degrees cooler than Phoenix or Tucson. You get 4 real but gentle seasons, a dusting of snow that's gone by lunch, and hiking weather most of the year. The town has its own university, Western New Mexico University, which keeps lectures, concerts, and young energy in circulation, and its own hospital, Gila Regional Medical Center, right in town. No mountain pass between you and the emergency room. The honest ledger. This is genuinely remote. The nearest big airports are in El Paso or Tucson, each a long desert drive away. The local economy still leans on the big copper mine nearby, and that 6% price drop reflects a market with more sellers than buyers right now, which is exactly why your dollar goes so far. Buyers' windows never announce themselves. They just look like this. American coastline and something absurd falls out. A home 2 blocks from the ocean costs a fortune in almost every state that has one. A home 2 blocks from Lake Huron, water so big it makes its own weather with sunrises over a horizon you can't see across, costs less than a used pickup truck collection. Alpena is the proof. Zillow has the typical home in this northeast Michigan town at $141,000, up 6% over the past year, and it sits directly on Thunder Bay, with a marina, a lighthouse, and miles of Huron shoreline in walking distance. $141,000 on the coast of a freshwater sea. The town of about 10,000 grew up on limestone and cement. The enormous quarry is still working, and it never got cute for tourists, which is exactly why the price stayed human. What it got instead is genuinely strange and wonderful. The waters off Alpena hold Thunder Bay Marine Sanctuary, the first freshwater marine sanctuary in America, protecting around 100 shipwrecks in water so clear you can see schooners from the 1800s off a kayak. And the visitor center in town is the kind of free museum cities 10 times this size would kill for. Glass-bottom boat tours run all summer over the wrecks, and locals will tell you October is the secret month, when the water calms and the maples on the shoreline turn. Sunset Huron Summers, a walkable downtown with a brewery and a bookstore, the bypath trail looping the shoreline, and healthcare that holds up. My Michigan Medical Center Alpena is a full hospital in town, the regional anchor for this whole corner of the state. Now the price of the price. Winter is the down payment here. Long, gray, snow-heavy, November through April asking you to mean it. And the nearest big city airport is a 3-hour drive. Snowbirds saw this the obvious way. Huron all summer, gone by Thanksgiving. And at these prices, you can afford to be 2 places. A coast for the cost of a condo's closing costs. That's the trade. Watch the cyclists roll into downtown Cumberland in a September afternoon. They come off the trail dusty and grinning, because this little Appalachian city is the hinge of one of the great bike rides on Earth. The Great Allegheny Passage runs 150 miles from Pittsburgh and ends here, where the C&O Canal towpath picks up and runs another 184 miles to Washington. Cumberland is the middle of a 335-mile car-free path across the eastern mountains, and retirees who love a bicycle treat this town the way golfers treat Scottsdale. Now, the number that stops people. Zillow has the typical Cumberland home at $141,000, up 2.3% this year, tied for the cheapest housing on this entire list, in a state most people file under expensive. Maryland's second city was once called the Queen City, a rail and industry powerhouse, and the bones show it. Brick church spires, a pedestrian downtown mall, grand old houses on the hillsides that cost less than a parking space in Bethesda. When the industry left, the prices froze, and what's thawing them now is exactly the crowd watching this video, people with a pension and a bike. The healthcare answer here is stronger than the price suggests. UPMC Western Maryland is a major regional hospital right in town, part of the Pittsburgh-based system, the kind of full-service medical center towns this cheap almost never have. Mountains in every direction, Rocky Gap State Park and its lake 15 minutes out, Amtrak stopping downtown daily on its way between Washington and Chicago. The scenic railroad runs steam excursions up the mountain to Frostburg in the warm months, and the fall foliage rides sell out the way concerts do. The honest sentence: Cumberland is still a recovering town. Parts of it are worn, incomes here are modest, and it needs people like you more than it needs another decade of headlines about what it used to be, which for a buyer is the entire opportunity. Queen City prices are only this polite while nobody's looking. After dark, Main Street in Wellsboro glows the way American Main Streets glowed 100 years ago, because the street lights here are real gas lamps, actual flames behind glass, lining the boulevards past the courthouse and the 1920s movie theater and the diner that still looks like the diner. It is, hands down, one of the prettiest small downtowns in the East, and it comes with a backyard that seems invented. 10 miles west of town, Pine Creek Gorge drops nearly 1,000 feet, 47 miles long, green walls, eagles, waterfalls, the place everyone calls the Grand Canyon of Pennsylvania, with a rail trail running the bottom of it that Backpacker and half the cycling magazines have ranked among the best rides anywhere. Zillow has a typical Wellsboro home at $227,000, up 6.1% over the past year, a price that buys a Victorian with a porch 3 blocks from those gas lamps. The town runs on a calendar of small rituals: the Pennsylvania State Laurel Festival every June, high school football Fridays, the Dickens of a Christmas weekend when the whole street goes 19th century, and it keeps a real hospital, UPMC Wellsboro, right in town, with the bigger UPMC network behind it, which for a borough of 3,000 people is quietly remarkable. The gorge does its own seasonal show: bald eagles in winter, waterfalls roaring in May, and a canopy of red and gold in October that fills the overlooks at Leonard Harrison State Park, with photographers from 3 states. Winters are proper northern Pennsylvania. That's the honest cost of the postcard. And a quick word while we're standing under the gas lamps. If this list is saving you research hours, the subscribe button is right there. It costs you nothing, and unlike a Victorian with a porch, it requires no maintenance whatsoever. All right, follow the river south with me, because the next town watched America move west, and it charged less than $200,000 for the view. In 1788, a boatload of Revolutionary War veterans floated down the Ohio River, stepped off where the Muskingum joins it, and founded the first organized American settlement in the entire Northwest Territory. Everything west of here, in a sense, starts at Marietta. 200 and change years later, the town still looks like it knows it. Brick streets, a working stern-wheeler docked downtown, ancient mounds from cultures 2,000 years older than the founders sitting right in the middle of the street grid, and a leafy little liberal arts campus, Marietta College, keeping lectures and concerts on the calendar. Zillow has the typical home here at $195,000, up 5.7% over the past year, and that money buys serious house in this town. Victorians on 4th Street, Federal-era brick near the river, porches built for October. Rivers are the whole personality. 2 of them meet downtown, so there's a levee walk, riverboat festivals, fishing off the point, and in September, the stern-wheelers gather from up and down the Ohio like it's 1895. The Lafayette Hotel anchors the riverfront the way it has since 1918, and dinner on its porch, watching the barges slide past, is the town's standing entertainment, cheaper than cable and better. For the practical file, Memorial Health System runs its flagship hospital right in Marietta, a genuine regional medical center with the specialties that matter. And Columbus is 2 hours northwest when a big city is required, which is close enough to use and far enough to ignore. The catch, worth saying plainly, this stretch of the Ohio Valley has an industrial past, some of it still visible across the river, and river towns flood. The historic district has the high watermarks to prove it, so you buy here with a flood map in hand, on the hill if you're cautious. What you're buying into is the oldest town in the Old Northwest, at a price the coasts stopped offering in the 1990s. History has always been Marietta's product. Turns out, it's also the discount. The most famous small town in American literature cost $138,000. Sit with that. Hannibal, Missouri is where Samuel Clemens grew up, the actual town he turned into the setting of Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn. The whitewashed fence is still standing on Hill Street. The cave Tom and Becky got lost in is real, and 10 minutes south. The Mississippi still rolls past the foot of downtown a mile wide, and Zillow has the typical home here at $138,000, up 2.9% this year, the cheapest housing on this entire list, cheaper than the towns nobody's heard of, and everyone on earth has heard of this one. The explanation is that Hannibal is a working river town of 17,000 that happens to host a literary shrine. Tourists come for the museums and the riverboat and Mark Twain's boyhood home. Then they leave, and the neighborhoods up the hill go back to being quiet streets of 1800s brick and big trees where a retiree's dollar behaves like it's 1999. Life here runs on the river and the calendar. National Tom Sawyer Days every July with the fence painting contest they've held since the 50s, eagles wintering on the Mississippi by the hundreds, lighthouse walks, and a downtown that's been slowly filling with wine bars and galleries as Twain tourism steadies it. Lover's Leap rises just south of downtown with a view that puts the whole river bend and the town below you at once, the kind of overlook other towns would charge admission for. Healthcare lands better than the price implies. Hannibal Regional Hospital is a genuine modern medical campus on the edge of town, the referral center for a whole rural corner of 2 states. And Quincy, Illinois sits 20 minutes up the river with a second full hospital system, so you're covered twice. Honesty file. Hannibal is a modest income town. Some blocks near downtown are still waiting their turn, and Mississippi River humidity in July is a lifestyle. But show me another place where you can own a Victorian within walking distance of the most storied river in American letters for the price of a mid-size SUV lease. The fence, by the way, still gets whitewashed every summer. By volunteers. Tom would be proud. Every December, this little Louisiana town strings more than 300,000 lights along the Cane River and has done some version of it since 1927, one of the oldest Christmas light festivals in the country. And for 6 weeks, the oldest town in the entire Louisiana Purchase glows like a snow globe that never needed snow. Natchitoches, and let's settle it now, the locals say Natchitoches, was founded in 1714, 4 years before New Orleans existed, and its 33-block historic district along the riverbank is the real thing. Wrought iron balconies, brick streets, Creole townhouses, the French Quarter's older, calmer, dramatically cheaper cousin. Zillow has a typical home at $191,000, essentially flat this year. And that money in this town buys you a life that tastes specific. Meat pies from the shop that's been folding them for generations. Steel Magnolia's filming locations on every corner because the movie was shot here in the town the story came from. Po' boys by the river, porch weather 10 months a year. There's a college in the mix too. Northwestern State University keeps 8,000 students, concerts, and ball games circulating through town, which is the quiet secret of half the towns on this list. A campus keeps a small town's lights on. Cane River Lake itself, the calm oxbow the town wraps around, hosts fishing tournaments and Christmas boat parades, and the brick riverbank amphitheater fills for free concerts on summer evenings. The hospital question has a direct answer. Natchitoches Regional Medical Center operates right in town, with the bigger systems of Shreveport and Alexandria, each about an hour away for the heavy specialties. The counterweight is the Louisiana trio you already suspect: summer humidity that means it, insurance costs that have climbed statewide even this far inland, and a modest local economy outside the university and tourism. What doesn't waver is the texture. 300 years of it on a riverbank for $191,000. Some towns sell square footage. This one sells centuries. In 1950, a radio host made America an offer. Any town willing to rename itself after his quiz show would get the show broadcast from its streets. One town in the New Mexico desert, then called Hot Springs, actually said yes. And 75 years later, Truth or Consequences is still Truth or Consequences. The locals just say TOC, and it remains the only town in America named after a game show. Here's why the old name mattered more. This town sits on a genuine geothermal aquifer. Mineral water in the 100-degree range rising under the whole downtown, and a dozen bathhouses, some restored Art Deco gems from the 30s, some gloriously funky, pipe it into private soaking tubs. In most of the world, retiring onto hot spring water costs resort money. Zillow has the typical TOC home at $160,000, up 1.7% this year, which makes this the cheapest mineral water retirement in the country, full stop. 5 miles north sits the other half of the pitch, Elephant Butte Lake, the largest lake in New Mexico. 40 miles of desert reservoir with marinas, striped bass, and sunsets that look rented, in a state with 300 days of sun and winter afternoons in the 50s. There's even a spaceport story down the road. The commercial launch site south of town occasionally sends something up, and locals watch from lawn chairs with coffee, which tells you everything about the pace here. The town itself is small, 5,000 or 6,000 people. Art galleries and thrift stores and green chili diners, eccentric in the way desert towns earn honestly. Now the plain talk it needs. Sierra Vista Hospital in town is a small critical access facility, good for the everyday. But the full-service hospitals are an hour north in Socorro, terms or 75 minutes up to Las Cruces and beyond, and that drive belongs in your math. The economy is thin, some storefronts nap.
TLC asks you to trade polish for soaking in hot mineral water under desert stars for the price of a parking spot in Denver. Plenty of people take that trade and never look back.
There's a college in Kentucky where every single student attends on a full scholarship. Has since the 1890s, no tuition, ever. And every student works a campus job to earn their place. Weaving, woodworking, farming, running the historical tell on the square. Berea College is one of the most quietly radical institutions in America, and the town wrapped around it absorbed its personality completely. Kentucky's legislature named Berea the folk arts and crafts capital of the state, and it behaves like it. Working studios line the old town square. Glass blowers you can watch mid-blow, potters, instrument makers, a crafts festival calendar that runs all year, and the college's own Boone Tavern Hotel serving spoon bread to visitors since 1909. The college farm store sells meat and produce raised by students a mile from where you buy it. And campus concerts, lectures, and theater run most weeks with tickets priced for a college town, meaning nearly free. Zillow has the typical home at $251,000, roughly flat over the past year. And the setting is the part the photos undersell. Berea sits exactly where the bluegrass meets the Appalachian foothills, with the Pinnacles trail system rising right behind town. Ridgetop views 20 minutes from your porch, and Lexington's big city everything, airport included, 40 minutes up Interstate 75. That drive matters for the medical file too. St. Joseph Berea is a solid community hospital right in town for the day-to-day. With the University of Kentucky's Academic Medical Center, one of the best hospital systems in the region, inside an hour when it counts. The trade-off here is subtle. Berea is a dry-ish, early-to-bed kind of town, where the excitement is a gallery opening. And if your retirement needs nightlife, this isn't it. Quick pause on the square before the top 8. Subscribing to this channel works a lot like Berea College. It costs absolutely nothing, and you get more out of it than you put in. The top 8 starts with roses. 25,000 of them. 25,000 roses bloom in this town every spring, and they've been throwing a festival for them since 1922. Thomasville sits in the red hills of far South Georgia, 20 minutes above the Florida line, and it learned hospitality a century before anyone on this list, because in the 1880s, this was where northern industrialists came to winter, building grand hotels and quail plantations in the piney woods until the town square filled with the kind of money that plants oak trees and opera houses. The hotels are gone. What they left behind might be the finest small downtown in the South, a genuinely working Victorian Main Street, bricks and awnings and balconies, with a cheese shop people drive 2 hours for, an 1880s opera house still staging shows, and the Big Oak, a live oak nearly 4 centuries old, with limbs the city cradles like public treasure. Zillow has the typical home at $201,000, up 5.6% over the past year. And for that, you're shopping real Victorians with porches on brick streets, the kind of house that costs 7 figures anywhere famous. Here's the sleeper fact that moves this town up any retirees list. Archbold Memorial Hospital in Thomasville is a major regional medical center, over 250 beds, the referral hub for a multi-county corner of 2 states, which is wildly outsized healthcare for a town of 18,000, and the single most underrated amenity on this entire countdown. Winters are gentle. Camellias bloom in January. Tallahassee's airport is 45 minutes. The food scene deserves its own sentence. The town's flagship restaurant grew from a corner grocery into a destination people cross state lines for, and the Saturday farmers market under the Oaks has run for decades. The honest note is that summer is South Georgia summer, thick from June to September, and the town's charm has started drawing Florida money north, which is why that 5.6% is worth watching. Roses, oaks, opera, and a 250-bed hospital. Nobody talks about Thomasville. The people who winter there prefer it that way. Be honest, when you hear Mississippi Gulf Coast, you picture casinos. That's Biloxi, across the bridge. Ocean Springs, on the other hand, is the town that decided to be everything else. A live oak canopy so old and complete that whole streets read as green tunnels. A walkable downtown of galleries and cafes that has won just about every coolest small town list that matters. And a beach of its own, Front Beach. Calm and quiet, looking back across the water at the skyline it politely declined to become. The soul of the place traces to one strange and wonderful man, Walter Anderson,
a painter who spent decades rowing 12 miles out to a barrier island to paint pelicans and hurricanes and marsh light, sometimes lashing himself to trees to watch storms come in. And the museum of his work downtown gives this little city an artistic anchor most state capitals would envy. Every November, the Peter Anderson Festival, named for his Potter brother, pulls 100,000 plus people into those oak streets for the biggest arts festival in Mississippi. New Orleans sits 90 minutes west and Mobile an hour east, which means big city hospitals, airports, and restaurants bracket this little town while it keeps its own pace in the middle. Zillow has the typical home at $275,000, up 0.5% this year, and Coastal Perspective makes that number sing. The same walkable arts town on the water formula runs $600,000 and up in Florida. Singing River Health System runs a full hospital right in town, with the VA's Biloxi Medical Center 20 minutes over the bay. Worth underlining for every veteran watching. Now, the ledger's other side, said plainly, this is the Gulf. Hurricanes are not hypothetical here. Katrina hit this coast harder than almost anywhere. The town rebuilt beautifully, and wind and flood insurance will be a real line in your budget that you quote before you sign anything. What the premium buys is the South's best-kept coastal arts town, shrimp boats at sunset and oak shade older than the country. Some towns you retire to, this one you get adopted by. Look at North Alabama on a map and you'll find something that doesn't look like Alabama at all. A 69,000-acre lake winding through Green Mountains, the biggest lake in the state. And on a peninsula sticking right out into the middle of it, a town. Guntersville is surrounded by water on 3 sides, Appalachian foothills rising behind, and it has quietly become the retirement lake town for people who did the math on Tennessee prices. Zillow has a typical home here at $311,000, up 2.7% over the past year, the second most expensive stop on this countdown. And the premium buys the thing that can't be manufactured. Water views from ordinary neighborhoods, bass fishing that hosts national tournaments, eagle watching weekends in January when the Raptors gather, and Lake Guntersville State Park's lodge and golf course on the bluffs at the edge of town. The lake is a Tennessee River impoundment, which means it's a working, living waterway. 60-year-old marinas, pontoon sunsets, catfish restaurants on stilts. In summer, the town square hosts concerts by the water, and the annual lakeside fireworks draw crowds from 3 counties onto pontoons anchored gunwale to gunwale in the dark. Town itself stays small, 8,000 and change, with a strollable main street, and when it needs a city, it borrows Huntsville, 45 minutes north, which happens to be one of the fastest-growing tech economies in the South, complete with a real airport and, crucially for this audience, Huntsville Hospital's massive medical campus. Closer to home, Marshall Medical Centers operates full hospitals on both sides of the lake, so the everyday care is minutes, not miles. The honest entry in the ledger, Alabama sits in Dixie Alley, tornado country, and lake-adjacent insurance plus storm awareness are part of the lifestyle here. Locals treat their weather radios like family members. In exchange, your property taxes will be among the lowest in America. Alabama barely taxes retirees at all. And your mornings start with mist coming off 69,000 acres. Mountains, water, and a tax code that likes you. That combination usually costs double. 60s and 70s, the biggest stars in the world kept flying into a nowhere corner of North Alabama to record Aretha Franklin, the Rolling Stones, Paul Simon, Bob Dylan, all chasing a sound that only seemed to exist in a few studios around Muscle Shoals. And Florence is the city across the Tennessee River from that legend, the biggest of the 4 Shoals towns and the one with the college, the walkable downtown, and the architecture. The music never left. Fame Studio still cuts records. The W.C. Handy Music Festival fills Florence every July in honor of the father of the blues, who was born here, and live music spills out of downtown rooms most weekends, which means you can retire somewhere your Saturday nights have a soundtrack older and better than any beach bars. Zillow has a typical Florence home at $216,000, up 2% over the past year, in a downtown and porches city of 40,000 where the University of North Alabama keeps things young. There's a Frank Lloyd Wright Usonian house you can tour, and Wilson Lake and Pickwick Lake bracket the city with some of the best smallmouth fishing in America. Healthcare is honest big city grade. North Alabama Medical Center is a major regional hospital right in Florence. And the state's retiree tax treatment applies here too. Social Security untouched, property taxes near the national floor. Downtown adds a legitimate food and coffee scene grown around the university, a renovated 1920s movie palace hosting live shows, and the Rosenbaum House, that Frank Lloyd Wright home, open for tours a few blocks from the square. The trade-offs delivered straight: summer humidity is a southern fact, and the show's economy, while diversifying, still runs modest. This is a $216,000 town because incomes match. And one last quick thing before the Final Four, because it fits here. This channel runs on the same principle as a muscle show session. No flash, just the good stuff played straight. So if that's your tempo, subscribe now. It costs you nothing, and the next 4 towns are the best material on the record. Speaking of records, the top 4 opens in a valley Greenbrier built. There's a Carnegie Hall in this town. Not a joke, not a nickname, an actual 1902 Carnegie Hall, one of the last few on Earth still in continuous use, hosting concerts and galleries in a West Virginia valley town of 4,000 people. That's Lewisburg in one fact, a small town that lives like a cultural capital. It sits in the Greenbrier Valley, farmland and blue ridgelines in every direction, with a downtown of 18th and 19th century brick that earned it National Historic District status, and a habit of topping coolest small town lists whenever the magazines wander through. The calendar does heavy lifting here. Carnegie Hall season, a professional theater company, gallery walks the first Friday of every month, the State Fair of West Virginia 10 minutes down the road every August, and Lost World Caverns, a genuine cathedral of a cave sitting just outside town. 15 minutes east is the Greenbrier, the grand old resort that gives the valley its name and its Gulf. And the valley even keeps its own small commercial airport with connections through Washington, a luxury none of the last 10 towns could offer. Trails thread the surrounding ridges. The Greenbrier River Trail runs 78 car-free miles up the valley for cyclists, and farm stands sell the county's produce all summer along the back roads. Zillow has the typical Lewisburg home at $310,000, up 5.6% over the past year, the price of being the acknowledged jewel of southern West Virginia, and still a fraction of what a college town cultured mountain ringed address runs in Virginia or Carolina. Greenbrier Medical Center sits right at the edge of town, the valley's full-service hospital, and West Virginia has spent recent years making itself steadily friendlier to retiree taxes. The straight talk, this is a valley of small numbers. 4,000 people, modest job market, winters with real snow, and that 5.6% gain says the secret has a slow leak. If a town with a Carnegie Hall, a cave, and a state fair sounds like your speed, the leak hasn't finished yet. During the Depression, a young actor came home to Southwest Virginia with an idea that sounds invented: open a theater where broke farmers could pay for their tickets with vegetables, eggs, or a ham. The Barger Theater opened in 1933, took its name literally, fed its actors on the proceeds, and never stopped. 90-plus years later, it's the State Theater of Virginia, running professional productions year-round in a town of 8,000, and Gregory Peck and Ernest Borgnine passed across its stage on their way up. That theater anchors Abingdon, a brick-sidewalked highlands town in Virginia's far southwest corner, where the historic district runs long and unbroken. The Martha Washington Inn holds down its block like it has since 1832, and the farm-to-table food scene punches 3 weight classes up. The Saturday Farmers Market is one of the best in the state. The summer outdoor concert series fills the fields by the creek, and White's Mill still grinds cornmeal a few miles out like the calendar never turned. Then there's the trail. The Virginia Creeper runs 34 miles from Abingdon up through Damascus toward White Top Mountain along an old rail grade, one of the most loved rides in the East. And after the 2024 hurricane floods tore through its upper half, the region poured itself into rebuilding. Sections have been reopening steadily, and the comeback became its own reason to love the thing. Zillow has a typical Abingdon home at $275,000, up 1.1% this year. Mild, Four Seasons Highlands money at 3,000 feet of rolling farm country. Johnston Memorial Hospital operates right in town under the regional Ballot Health system, sized like the referral hospital it is. Honest margins. The far corner location means Knoxville and its airport are about 90 minutes, Roanoke over 2 hours, and this is a quiet pleasures town. Theater, trail, table, repeat. Retirees who need more verbs should scroll up the list. Retirees who just read that sentence and smiled should look at flights. Some towns become retirement towns by accident. Mountain Home did it by geography. This Ozark town sits on a plateau with two enormous lakes bracketing it like parentheses. Norfolk to the east, Bull Shoals to the west. Hundreds of miles of combined shoreline wrapped in green hills. And below the dams, the White and Norfolk rivers run cold and clear year-round, holding some of the finest trout water in North America. Brown trout the size of arguments, fly fishermen crossing oceans to stand in it. Retirees discovered this in the 60s and never stopped coming, which is why Baxter County has one of the oldest median ages in Arkansas for decades, and why the town of 13,000 carries infrastructure built for a much bigger place. That maturity shows up in the small print. An active senior center, a hospice network, volunteer organizations deep enough to staff a small government, and more fishing guides per capita than possibly anywhere in America. Start with the one that matters most. Baxter Health is a full regional hospital right in Mountain Home, 200-plus beds, cardiology, cancer center, the works. Medical muscle that towns 5 times this size go without, built up over decades precisely because the population it serves earned it. Zillow has a typical home at $240,000, up 1.7% over the past year, and Arkansas keeps living costs and property taxes near the bottom of the national tables. Days here organize themselves around water. Dock coffee, bass mornings, pontoon evenings. Trout in January because the tailwaters never freeze. And the Twin Lakes mean you can wear out one shoreline and start on the second. The plain-spoken costs, Mountain Home is genuinely tucked away. The nearest big airports are 2.5 to 3 hours out in Springfield or Little Rock. Summers are humid Ozark summers, and the town's calendar is water, church, and quiet. Imported nightlife not included. What it offers instead is the most complete version of the Lake Town retirement on this list, at a price the coast's abandoned, with a hospital the size of the promise. One town beat it, barely, and by doing something no other small town in America thought to try. In 2000, a river town in far western Kentucky looked at its emptying historic neighborhood and made the strangest bet in American urban history. It started selling the old houses to artists. Not cheap, practically free, some for $1, plus moving help and loans, on one condition: move here, live here, make your art here. They called it the Artist Relocation Program, and the art world thought Paducah had lost its mind. 25 years later, Lower Town is a national model. The neighborhood is full of working studios and restored Victorians. Cities around the world copy the playbook. And UNESCO named Paducah a creative city of crafts and folk art, one of only a handful in the United States, sharing a designation list with Santa Fe, a Kentucky river town of 25,000 people on the same cultural map as Santa Fe? And Zillow has the typical home here at $185,000, up 6.7% over the past year, the hottest gain on this entire countdown, and still the 4th cheapest price on it. Everything about Paducah runs on that same stubborn ingenuity. The town sits where the Tennessee River pours into the Ohio. 4 rivers converge within a few miles, and when the 1937 flood nearly erased it, Paducah answered with a massive flood wall, then decades later turned the wall itself into art, covering it with dozens of murals that walk you through 2 centuries of river history. The National Quilt Museum downtown draws pilgrims from every continent because this is the quilting capital of the world. And before you smile at that, the American Quilter Society show each spring fills every hotel for 50 miles and pours tens of millions into town. Fiber art turns out to be an economy. Downtown works the way downtowns are supposed to. Brick storefronts full of restaurants and galleries running down to the riverfront. The Carson Center hosting Broadway tours and symphonies in a hall towns this size aren't supposed to have. And then the practical spine underneath the charm. Because this is the part that separates a fun visit from a wise address. Paducah is the medical hub for the entire western end of Kentucky and slices of 3 neighboring states, with 2 full hospitals, Baptist Health Paducah and Mercy Health Lourdes, real cardiology, real cancer centers, the kind of double coverage that towns on this list twice its price couldn't offer. Barkley and Kentucky Lakes, two of the biggest reservoirs in the eastern half of the country, sit half an hour east for the fishing and pontoon chapters of your week. Interstate 24 runs through. Nashville is 2 hours, St. Louis 3. Now look back down this list, because Paducah is quietly holding everyone's best card at once. The working art scene you loved in Silver City and Ocean Springs, the rivertown bones of Marietta and Hannibal, the outsized hospital muscle of Thomasville and Mountain Home, the festival calendar of Lewisburg, the walkable brick heart of Abingdon, and a price within a few dinners of Cumberland and Alpena. Every town on this countdown survived by keeping one identity alive. Paducah is number 1 because it built itself a new one, on purpose, with paint and quilts and $1's worth of real estate, and then let the world take 25 years to notice. The honest asterisk is Ohio Valley humidity in August and a tornado-aware corner of the map. Locals keep their weather radios plugged in. But if the question is where in America a retiree gets art, water, walkability, 2 hospitals, and a house for $185,000, the answer has been sitting at the meeting of 4 rivers this whole time. Nobody talks about Paducah. Paducah was too busy building. 20 towns and one pattern hiding in plain sight. Not one of these places is a secret because something's wrong with it. They're secrets because they kept doing one unflashy thing well, while the famous towns did marketing, a college, a hospital, a festival, a river, a trail, a theater that takes hams. Identity plus an institution. That's the whole formula. And it's why a $140,000 coast in Michigan and a UNESCO city in Kentucky can hide in the same country as million-dollar retirement brochures. Now the part I owe you straight. Every town here has a catch. I told you each one as we went. And a video is not a visit. Go in the off-season, in the August humidity or the February gray. Talk to people at the diner. Price the insurance. Tour the hospital, then decide. Numbers change monthly, so verify everything current before you move a single box. And tell me in the comments which of these 20 could you actually see yourself in, and which town did I miss, because that answer becomes a future video. If this saved you a few weekends of research, subscribe. Everything gets pulled fresh the week it airs. See you in the next one.